in March.
Right.
If
and
something
after
would,
that, right.
if something would come up in the meantime, the board has the authority to appoint an election committee. Now, this particular thing was just a debacle all the way around because it's never happened that I'm aware of in the history of,
Two. Well, it was a
not all of them.
seven-member board, yeah, and it was 7 members. Nancy's,
That was many years ago.
If-
So that's the reason, besides keeping the committee there, the chances of those people coming back, I mean, it was hard to, we had to strong arm people to get them on the committee this year.
Well, if they would just understand that their job more than likely is done in March. But if we ever had this issue raise its ugly head again, and obviously it's happened before, long before my time.
Long before.
Right, I mean, it's not a big deal just to say, we would like to be able to call you back in quickly if we needed to. So that was the whole point.
So
of this.
they become election committee reserves.
Yeah.
In other words.
Yeah.
Because that was a major issue for us as well. We didn't know what to do, we didn't have time to do it.
And didn't, and you wouldn't have time to do it. But like I said, now you've got an election committee out there for 6 months. We've been around since 1971, and it's happened, you said they removed all 7?
No, I don't think it was all 7,
I don't
I think it was
think we moved all
4.
seven.
No, it was 7. It was 7. It was, no, I mean, Gabby has that file. If you're looking for it.
Anyway, twice since 70s.
Gabby has.
So,
yeah,
I mean, we
the whole
can't
board is
build
7.
in,
Oh, no.
They had like 16 people's run for the next election, so it was like looking for 7 new people. It was insane.
yeah,
I was looking at all the bios.
but in recent history. So anyway, I think that you would still, I don't know what the chances of this ever happening again. I would have bet it would have never happened in the first place. But, you know, I think it's unnecessary when you've already got them up for 6 months.
Yeah, and one other reason that I'm not really a big fan of this is it almost makes it feel like an obligation to those members when it's all voluntary, the election committee. So if they do their job and in March, when the new board's installed and say come June, the wheels fall off and we have riots in the street again, there's probably gonna be more than 1 or 2 of those people that say, you know what, I don't want to be part of this. And then now we're gonna have to go back and reappoint them anyway. So I don't hate it. I'm not wholly opposed to it being in here. I think we should go through the rest of this document and
Yeah.
then circle back to it.
Put them on call. so
I
to
just
speak.
think, well, I think you need new people, and he's right, you know, they're done. They know they only have a certain amount of time to be on it. And then, you know, I'm not looking for problems, and you're not gonna cover every single thing that could possibly happen ever in your bylaws.
Right.
So, all right, page 7. Okay, there's a change, this is under section annual election. And it's a section that reads, a plurality of votes cast by those entitled to vote and voting shall constitute an election. The candidates receiving the most votes shall be elected as members of the board of directors. The member receiving the next highest vote count shall be designated as the non-voting alternate. In case of a tie, choice will be by lot. Then that last part was the addition. They want to change it to cast by lot owning members. And then elected as members of the board of directors, the member receiving the next highest vote count shall be designated as the non-voting alternate. Dustin?
So I personally don't agree with any of the revisions in number 13 because those entitled to vote are already defined earlier in the document.
In declaration.
Yeah, so we don't need to say lot owning members. Those entitled to vote and voting, which means of those who are entitled to vote, the ones that actually care to cast the ballot, which is correct, shall constitute an election. So that means out of all the membership here, if only 10 people who are entitled to cast a vote cast it, the results of that election are the results of the election. So I don't see the need for that. the member receiving the next highest vote count shall be designated as the non-voting alternate. I am not in favor of the non-voting alternate at all. I don't see the necessity. I think I don't like it. I mean, there's processes for filling vacancies that occur. I don't think we need to send alternates.
And again, we can't expect the bad things to happen every single year. I agree with Dustin. I think it's not a jury. You've got an additional person to involve in everything, and then yet they have no right to vote just in case somebody dies. It just doesn't make any sense. So I agree with Dustin. I don't think that that's a really good idea at all. Sometimes we have enough trouble getting anybody to vote and at all. I can remember an election where we had 3 positions and 4 people running. So and everybody got a spot. But I agree with Dustin. I think it's unnecessary.
I think, correct me, Linda, if I'm wrong, but I think that was one of those things, because of what happened, they wanted to make sure that they had somebody in the wings who could step in.
Well, having read this, I think the vast majority of the red in this document is because of what happened.
Well, of course, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not the only one here. We had a good big committee, we talked about it. Their thinking was if we had something along this line, that many times we have people getting on the board who have little to no experience. So if someone ran and got close enough to be the next vote getter, that you could, in essence, be training them. They could be not necessarily sitting there with you. They certainly can't vote, and they don't go to an executive session. But they're expected to be there. They're expected to conduct themselves appropriately and be in training.
We would also have to change our other documents to reflect the fact of 6 board members, 5.
Well, you wouldn't be considered a board member.
Well, you would have to be, if you were privy to confidential information, you would have to be.
Where I see could be a problem is say that you have someone, like you said, we barely have enough people running. So there's 3 spots coming up, so you have 4 people. That means the 4th person is an automatic. Say that someone talks a popular person into running, but behind the scenes, the whole time is they're gonna, once they get the spot, they're gonna resign, and that means the loser would automatically get the spot. I just think that, I mean, there's room for it to be very political.
Cause more problems than it's.
Do you see what I'm saying? You know, if it's tight, if we don't have enough people, and the person that everyone loves or whatever one's on there, they said, we promise, just to go with this because I know you'll get it, but then I'll just be your wingman. I just see that there could be more, just because I've worked for a lot of boards, and like I said, with that, there could be that opportunity, maybe.
And
Just
you would
playing
have,
devil's advocate.
and you would have to, because if that person was an alternate to the board, they would still have to be considered a board member. We would have to change the language that reported as 6 directors, 5 voting, and 1 alternate. And that has to be in our governing documents if we change that. So I know we're reacting to a really ugly situation, and I know because I was personally involved in that ugly situation. But I think that I agree with Brianna, that could set up a situation that is just totally inappropriate.
Yeah, and on a sidebar, and I don't know if you meant it like you said it, about someone inexperienced being voted onto the board, or if that was just a way of speaking, but I've heard that a lot lately, and it kind of irritates me a little bit, because that's not the way that this government is designed. You don't have to be a retired CEO to be a board member. You just have to feel some personal responsibility and take pride in this place and the job that you're doing. So,
Everybody brings talent.
yeah, I don't
to
like
tables.
I don't like a litmus test for a board member.
No, in our example is Robert. Robert thought that he needed, when it came to it, that he needed to make a step down, because but he has a whole other realm of experience, hence the electronics and Facebook and that stuff. I mean, so everybody brings something, so it makes the pool very small if everyone thinks they have to be something, you know?
And when you do, the eventuality that you do elect someone with very little experience running a business or managing anything, just keep in mind that the people that in that realm that run, there's not all that many of them. So you're still gonna have other board members to kind of shepherd them along and teach them the ropes and kind of corral them when they get a little out of hand. Like, no one person at this table can make a decision. You know, it's a
Well, this is also a reaction to what we just went through.
yes, absolutely, it's absolutely
I mean, you know,
understandable. It was a horrible thing.
No,
But
on every side.
but the bylaws did not cause the root problem.
That's correct.
The bylaws were not the root problem. The bylaws were used
Yes.
to perhaps exacerbate the root problem
Yes.
at that time, but they weren't the root problem, the cause.
Yeah, the declarations and the bylaws tell us how we have to operate. If we choose not to operate that way, the membership should take action, you know, and it happened. But the cause of it wasn't in here.
Okay. I'm not saying it was, I'm just saying this is a reaction to
Yes.
what happened.
Yes.
And we understand that completely.
On page 8,
I think we're still.
Wait, you got
are we still on 7?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the second part on 14 is actually just an extension of the 13.
Yeah, it won't work.
The change
If
to
we don't have
read,
13, we can't have.
no,
Right.
14. Yeah, if we don't have 13, we can't have 14, because 14 reads now, or the recommended language, a vacancy for an unexpired term shall be filled by the, instead of first runner-up of the winners of the annual election, a non-voting alternate.
Let's put it back the way it was.
And we just have to, actually, there may be some changes that are warranted here to make the process easier, but
Well, I don't think right here.
not here.
Yeah, later
This
in
is
the
not the
document,
spot.
yes, we can make it easier later in the document.
Right. So 13 and 14, we recommend that they stay as original. Okay, page 8. Well, this has got a lot more stuff on it.
I think
This is
We've
under,
been working for 4 months, we had to come up with something.
this is under vacancies, okay? And under the section for removal, they want to add, the date of the special meeting must be set. This is, rules for calling a special meeting. The date of the special meeting must be set within 10 days of receipt of the removal petition, and the special meeting must be held within 45 days of receipt of the removal petition. Dustin?
Is that in the
Okay, so
declaration?
this, I think,
Yeah. it's in
Page 8,
page 8,
Special meeting?
right here.
Page 8.
Special meeting?
it's under vacancies still.
Vacancies?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, under
So,
vacancies.
so this is where I think we can grease the skids a little bit here. So, the date of the special meeting must be set within 10 days of receipt of the removal petition, comma, and the special meeting must be held within 45 days of receipt of the removal petition. That is the proposed amendment. I don't hate that language. I don't like the numbers, and I'm gonna tell you why. I think because it's not addressed in here and it caused what happened the last go around, which, on a personal note, I didn't think turned out too bad for the association. You got a decent board out of it, but this has a mechanism for calling the meeting to remove board members and no mechanism for installing new ones.
There was the reason for the perpetual, so to speak.
Right, so,
Yeah.
in my opinion, if I was going to change this,
How the
I would extend those days by quite a bit. Well, by quite a long way, because now you are forced into a spot where you have to hold a special election. So you can combine those in this paragraph, but you have to give time to solicit interested applicants, let them talk to people,
And you're
create a new, all the ballots, go through the register and find out who's eligible to vote.
Or if you go back to the election thing, just basically it would be more generic, but I mean, you still have to follow the same, I guess,
Well,
how would you do that?
well,
Right,
down, well,
so
down,
you could just basically put it in here, you could just say when the membership calls
For a special
for
election?
a special meeting for removal, concurrently, you'll run a special election, and the board will have
Right,
to
and
then.
that's exactly what we're
go through.
looking for.
Yes, so you need to put that language in here, but by necessity, you're gonna have to run those dates out quite a bit, because it takes time.
Well, I understand that, but the
To
point
do
was
all
is
that.
at least if they could do the,
So the board, we can absolutely, you can require that the board give notice of the intent to hold a removal
Right,
and a
right.
special election,
and that's,
but then the trigger dates have to be pushed back.
and that's in here, is the notice of meeting and the agenda for the meeting shall be prepared by the board of directors, shall state time, date, place, and purpose of the meeting. The
Yes.
change, the date, by the way, special meeting needs to be capitalized. You know, the date of the,
where are you, Sandy, right now?
I am right there
He's on the red,
on the red.
and
The date of the special
Oh.
meeting must be set, within 10 days. It may take longer than that to certify that the
That the
petition,
the signatures
that
are
the
actually,
petition is a legal
right,
petition. It
right.
may take longer than 10 days to do that,
Well, they went 10 weeks.
you know,
no,
so.
we don't wanna go too.
No, don't talk about what they did, that's all water under the bridge. But it was set within 10 days, and maybe we need to extend that to like 21 days. It gives them time to certify, and then, and the special meetings must be held within 45 days of receipt of the removal petition. And Dustin's right, 45 days may not be long enough
Because you gotta
because
send out ballots.
you have to, well, that's
Angus-
a
Angus
special, no,
CPA.
it says special meeting. It does not say special election. If you're going to require a special election, then you're going to have to set it up differently, because right now the bylaws only call for a special meeting,
Right.
which
Yeah.
you set up. You can have a ballot with it, but it still has to be called a special meeting.
Right.
Now, but it may take longer than that, because you will have to find people who are willing to serve.
But remember,
So
that's why, because we had no leader at the time and we had no board, so all you had were a bunch of employees. So that's why when the outcome could happen like it did happen, there needs to be procedures in going forward for the
So-
election.
So
Right, and
what
this
my
isn't-
suggestion is here, where, under vacancies,
Mhm.
in paragraph D, where it talks about removals, when you call for the special meeting for removal, the membership also needs to, and it needs to be
Okay.
codified here, that
Yes.
the membership needs to call for a special election to run immediately after the removal
It would be
meeting in the
simultaneous.
same meeting.
Yes.
It would be
Yes.
saying, so do you want to remove this member? Yes. Do you want to elect this person? Pick this, you gotta pick a
So
person
the
at the
votes
same
will already
time.
be there, and the CPA will count votes for removal and votes for new
Replacement.
election. And
Special
here you
election.
go, yes.
So that way there's
Well,
not,
hindsight's wonderful, folks.
Well, of course.
Yeah, isn't
I
it?
mean,
So what if somebody doesn't get removed, but somebody gets elected?
Well, if
Well, then
there's no
that-
removal, it
then
doesn't
that
trigger an election for that
Right.
vote.
yeah, see, that's the one reason that our attorney brought that point up, that if people aren't removed, then a special election doesn't do you any good, because you're not going to, so that's,
but just
so
in
the
case.
special meeting is simply for removal. And you won't know whether you need a special election until then.
But it should be there.
So,
It should, yes, it should have been
but you can write it in there,
simultaneous.
but it may not be at the same.
No, it has to be at the same time.
But yeah, but you have all these ballots counted, you have all these people who ran, and then they go nowhere.
So what?
Yeah, that's
I
exactly
just think
right.
that the special election can be prepared for,
Because then you go by the
But not
highest
set the same
vote.
You
date.
cannot
You
leave
go by the
the
highest votes.
association without a board of directors.
actually, the law says that they remain in that position if they are not replaced.
You wanna tell the membership?
Yeah.
No, we did.
Wait, no, this is how so you have, whenever you send it out there, because we had to vote on, the membership had to vote to get rid of the board. But you would have 2 columns, and then from that, say that one, say Kirby was, everyone decided to keep him on. then he would now become probably up at the top. But then you would go in and you would find out whoever the
Right.
most votes were that
It's
you
a
had
very simple
selected.
Okay,
bifold
it's not
ballot.
that simple, we
One
need,
column for removals, one column for election votes.
We
If
have-
somebody's not removed, the
we,
vacancy's not filled.
we have, for an election, 60 days. And at that point, at 60 days is when you pull the membership. Can't be any further away from it has to be 60 days, no less than 10 days, you get your membership list. It's required
But
by,
that's why he wants to add a
I know,
special election.
it's required by state law.
We all
So-
know what the requirements
Right.
are, but we're saying you can include it in this.
You
paragraph.
can, if you want to have a special election,
At the same time.
every time.
as removal.
I mean, and think of this, there may be one, okay, devil's advocate here. You have 5 members, only 1 member people want to remove.
Well, then you need to
Oh,
talk
wait,
to your
can
board member,
I,
because we can get rid of you. I'm just kidding.
any day now, would they, I got tons of stuff to do.
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
kidding.
no, what I'm saying is that the chances of all 5 being removed are probably not as good as the chance of maybe just 1. Okay, now, by state law, the existing board can remove a director,
Right,
period.
by themselves.
Yes.
That's correct.
But if that doesn't happen and the membership chooses to remove 1 member, and you have a special election for 1 member, remember that you have got to take the cost of that, running that at the same time.
Right.
So if there's a way to set it up that way and the membership wants to do it that way,
I think the odds aren't as good as you think, because there's a whole lot of straight ticket voting on this fort.
If you remove 1, if the membership should decide to vote and remove 1, the remaining board would then have the option to pick somebody to fill it.
They could.
So you wouldn't have to go for the election. It's one year we're
Good.
trying to take them all.
But
There's the issues.
But the risk you're taking is if you put them all on the removal ballot, people are just gonna take a pen and go,
Right down the line.
Oh,
So the only people, the petition will tell, by law, the petition has to tell you exactly what the petition's for. So the petition would have to say, they want to remove Jane Doe or John Smith. Okay, then there would only be a special election for 1 position, that one position.
that one wouldn't be an election because the
And you wouldn't have
next
to.
runner-up from the previous election, according to
well,
page 8, will be installed by the sitting board members, the remaining board.
Now, some of the stuff at the bottom may have something to do with what we do at the top. But we do have to extend the time for the petition, a special meeting petition to be reviewed. 10 days is not enough.
yeah, I went to 21 and then I said 60.
Yeah, and then a special meeting called within 60 days because that would be a requirement as far as getting everything out. It will take that long to do ballots and addresses and envelopes and all that kind of stuff. Then lower on there on the G, they have added a section. The first runner-up in each annual election of the board of directors will serve as a non-voting alternate. Okay, we take that one. That one's already been removed.
Yeah, yeah.
The non, and then again, that one. Vacancy in the board of, this is H. Vacancy in the board of directors change caused by resignation, death, or incapacity of the former director at a time other than at an annual election may only be filled by the non-voting alternate. So these things we would recommend be changed.
Yes.
I think the recommendation that I would make, and simply this is just personal from experience through this and being on the election committee, would be if we're going to have an automatic fill that previously it was written, and this is what was confusing, is that during the election cycle,
Right.
then it would automatically go to the first runner-up, right, during election cycle. But election cycle was not defined. So if you were to, and what it was actually talking about, we think, when we discussed this, when this was originally rewritten, is it means during the time up to say, for instance, somebody's on the ballot and decides halfway through they don't want to be there anymore, okay? So the ballot,
Like, remember Roseski passed away?
sure,
And then
yeah. And so they don't want to be there, they die, you know, who knows?
during the election process.
During the process, up to the point.
Then the
Well,
next runner-up would be the,
right. In other words, when it was announced with this person withdrawing, the next person vote getter would go.
right,
So that might work if we defined the election cycle. Say for up to the time of 30 days or something,
Well,
whatever.
and then the old one, if, like with Lee, we went ahead and filled it with Myrna, but technically, the old one stated if you had more than a year, then the board needs to fill it. If it was less than a year of their term, then the board could just go off.
Okay,
of
so let me finish.
board.
If, say for instance, I'm gonna just pick 30 days. 30 days after the announcement of the annual meeting is considered the election cycle. And if there's a resignation, death, arrest, whatever, in that period of time, it would be considered in the election cycle and the next person would be appointed. Day 31, at that point, then the board would appoint the person to fill it.
Okay, and if that's what the consensus was, that's fine. What this document, what the bylaws actually say is, if there is an existing vacancy for whatever reason, at the time an election occurs, and that vacancy is not due for election until, say, next year, or then 2 years, then the members can go ahead and vote on that one because it's vacant. In between that, the only mechanism currently for filling is by majority vote of the board of directors. So I don't like the alternate directors thing.
You like the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, the way it is fine. It's still the affirmative vote of the board if the vacancy occurs between elections, which I have no problem with. I also have no problem with the last line. In the case of a second vacancy, the election committee shall call a special election. I don't love that one because the board can do the same thing again. But I don't hate it because at some point, you know, the members should have a say. I mean, theoretically, you could change out half of the board without any member input at all. So that one's a wash to me, but yeah, the original language, I'm absolutely fine with.
Would you go with a 30-day extension after the annual meeting as part of the election cycle?
Well, could you call the election cycle 1 year, because there will be an election every year?
You know, then it takes it fast. The problem with a special election after an election is you're looking at another 2,000.
major expense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big expense, depending on the cost of postage, which is getting worse all the time. You're talking about $2,000 to $3,000. And then the independent auditor is at least $1,000, and that's what you're gonna have to negotiate here. So so, I mean, I think the most we've ever spent was like $3,500, but you gotta take that into consideration. So I think where we ran into problems before was that election cycle was not defined. And I think if we define election cycle, that will help.
So I don't personally see the need for that, because once the election is done and certified, the election cycle is over. It's done.
That's fine too,
So,
I don't have a problem with
You
that.
know, I'm not wholly opposed to, say, 30 days after an election, if a newly elected board member comes on and says, you know what, this is more than I thought it was gonna be, and I just can't hack it, and they quit, then
Yeah, we had it.
on one, it's not terrible for the next runner-up to get it, but I don't like it because that's not the way democratic government works.
Right.
That next runner-up was not voted onto the board by the membership. So, in my mind, the members didn't elect him, so I have no problem with the board appointing one. I don't like, we'll go just down the list, and the next guy down the list got 27 votes.
Or the write-in.
Yeah, that's not,
The write-in was-
Write-ins don't count,
Yeah.
that's in there.
that's not,
Write-ins.
that's not the way it works.
And sometimes, you know, I agree with Dustin, it's not bad it was a 10-vote difference, that's not a big deal, but if it's a 100-vote difference, it is a big deal.
Right. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
why,
when
you know.
people are only garnering 250 votes, you hate to stick a guy in there that got, 70 votes when
Well,
that's not the will of the membership.
could you
Right.
put a 30-day on it like you said, but
What about percentage?
also, the board could canvass the people who ran and didn't get in to see if they were
Well,
still.
I don't think the board should install anybody without doing that in the first
Right,
place.
and I think that's where
Like,
that's where most
The
boards would
mechanism
start.
already exists to fill it, and I'm fine with it the way it is. The board should never just install somebody because they raise their hand. I mean, they should solicit candidates,
Interview people.
interview them, get the pool before we
Well,
make
that's
a
what I'm saying,
decision.
that the board
is
would
what we
set,
did
would
this last
interview the people.
Yeah,
who
what I'm
ran
saying is,
before.
it's already in here, like, we don't need to change it, the mechanism exists to
Okay,
do that.
yeah.
And that's what we did when Jim Race resigned. Interviewed people. Right in front of everybody, if you remember.
Well, we don't necessarily need to do it in front of the whole, that was,
Yeah, that was a
That
little
was-
extreme.
thank goodness
Oh,
one,
no,
thank goodness one still comes around
Actually,
after the battle.
several members really liked that, several members didn't.
Yeah, I know,
Okay,
but I mean,
let's,
Not everyone can stomach that as a
Let's-
member, I don't know, I would like to see more weak people on the board. Weak does not mean weak, you know what I mean, because they bring a lot, we all don't have to have the mic to make a really good
right,
contribution, but I think that's what a lot of people think you have to have.
I think thoughtful is what you're looking for.
What?
not me. No, you know what, somebody who's willing, want somebody who's willing to stand up and,
Okay, next.
on page
Food
14.
truck.
Yeah, let's move this on, we're gonna,
Let's get through this.
it'll go faster at the board meeting because we've already discussed it. The next on page 14, Article 8, Parliamentary Authority is an addition. Rules contained in the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised shall govern the association in all cases to which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with these bylaws and any special rules of order the association may adopt. Dustin?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, just because the wording says it will govern the association.
That's the
And
eyes.
it's really, all cases in which they're applicable is really ambiguous. So meetings are run by parliamentary procedure already. There are, if a member observing a meeting would like to call a point of order because something's out of order, they're well within their act, like, it already exists here. It's being run that way, yes.
Not only that, Robert's Rules of Order actually says in Robert's Rules of Order that Robert's Rules of Order need not be used for small group meetings, small organizations. We already follow basically Robert's Rules of Order light, diet, Robert's diet,
That was the term I heard from
Yes,
Mr. Berman,
yes.
like,
light. Myrna, I give that credit to that, credit to Myrna for that. We already followed basic rules of order.
okay.
Roberts even says you don't need to do these with small group meetings, and our meetings are small. I don't see where more strict Robert's Rules of Order will help us in our meetings at all. They won't add anything to the meetings, make them any better. And we try to keep them member-friendly as it is. So we already follow the basics of Roberts, so I think that this is an unnecessary section. Anna, Bill?
I probably could use more order, but.
Why, you don't?
Well, like the parliament part, I know that I don't raise my hand, I interrupt, so I apologize for that,
That's you breaking.
but that's.
Bill, you agree or disagree?
Robert's rules, leave it as it was. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, if Robert Rule says I'm wrong, but this is when we have a meeting on Wednesday, it's a board meeting. It's only for the board. The public is invited to watch, but we have incorporated them into it with questions. So I don't think we have to go back to saying, no, you can't talk anymore.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what-
Absolutely not.
I agree. Okay, last part of it is article, since they added that, they changed the number, which obviously we have to fix. Amendments.
May I, just for 1 second before you move
Oh,
on?
absolutely, yes.
Is Robert Rules
You
allowed to
may-
interrupt?
Include Robert's Rules of Orders in the annual membership meeting because that's the members' meeting. So have no problem if you want to write that in there. We can stick that
We
in.
have one particular member who is a huge fan of Robert's Rules of Order.
We had a former member,
Yeah.
very sweet little old lady, who used to take up 20 minutes of every meeting trying to enforce Robert's Rules of Order. And like I said, Robert's Rules adjusts for the size of the meeting. So we are already following Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
Okay. I don't want to interrupt again. Anybody else? Okay. This is amendments to the bylaws. The bylaws may be amended the way the change by the majority vote of the membership during an annual election. However, amendments to reflect changes in Title II, Chapter 209 of the Texas Property Code and related Texas and federal law may be made at any regular meeting of the Board of Directors by a majority vote of the directors, the proposed amendments having been submitted in writing. Bylaws and amendments shall be filed with the District Clerk, Kinney County, Texas, placed in the principal office and updated on the association's website no later than 5 business days after the annual election or the regular meeting of the Board of Directors. That's the change. It used to read, bylaws may be amended at any regular meeting of the Board of Directors by a majority vote of the directors, the proposed amendment having been submitted in writing. So it just took out the membership vote again. Would have to be done, but we have an election every year now, so, Dustin.
Okay, for this one, I would leave what they have crossed out in there. I would add a comma behind it and put or by the majority vote of the membership during an annual election, and then remove everything in red after that. Then, the board may still amend them as circumstances deem necessary, or the membership has at their disposal the option to amend them at the annual elections.
If it shows up on a ballot.
Right.
But they haven't showed up on a ballot.
Well, that's because it hasn't been in there before.
Right, I get that, but I'm just saying, I mean, so
Yeah.
that would be
It's not
something
a-
that you guys would have to agree to want to include it in the ballot.
So every time if we say, okay, one thing that kind of drives me crazy, say, the voting, say you have, I have, say, 3 memberships. And on the election, it says you have to put it in 3 separate envelopes. To me, that drives me crazy because why do I want to spend 55 cents per envelope when the envelope doesn't matter? It's they have to check it on your ballot, your account number. It's not the envelope. So it's, it's small, but for me to make that change, we have to send it out, or say that February 5th isn't gonna work out, like after the election committee goes through, because it's procedural. So there's some hiccups in procedure. So it should be the 10th, not the 5th. That means we're gonna have to send it out we have to wait and do it?
No,
No, do it with the
with that ballot.
elections.
No, it'd just be on the ballot. is all.
Right, it's absolutely no different than a constitutional amendment in the state.
It's the same as a
You get enough
declaration.
signatures on a petition, it goes on the ballot, and membership votes on it.
Because a lot of changes, a lot of tweaking to bylaws, there's several changes in here, but a lot of tweaking on bylaws, like say an address change or some minor corrections, should be made without an election. I mean, for typographical
Well,
errors
yeah,
and
but
things
that's,
like that.
if you had a ballot for that purpose, and to include all
But see,
necessary bookkeeping,
The board has to be able to make changes required by changes in the law without sending it to an
We
election.
But
understand
we're
that,
not
we
taking that
understand.
out.
No, we're gonna
just
leave that in.
adding them the
Yeah,
ability
yeah.
to do it on the election ballot.
Members may petition
But
for
what if they say no?
changes.
If the membership doesn't want it, then they vote against it.
They vote against
It's just,
And
it's
You
you
very
can,
simple.
you can put a single sentence in there that membership can request changes to the bylaws by
Put a comma.
petition.
Or by the majority vote of the membership during an annual election.
The point of it was to let the membership be aware of what's going on with the bylaws.
Yes.
And I hate to bring this up, but Robert's Rules of Order says that a board should never change the bylaws without the vote of a membership. So
The state law says it's in, whatever your documents, your legal, your governing documents say is how you do it.
Yeah, we're not,
But if we change it, then how, yeah, so what are we changing to? So, like, what are you proposing?
my proposal would be to leave the original language in there,
that was crossed
the
out.
part that they crossed out,
Yeah.
and then after writing a comma, or by the majority vote of the membership during an annual election.
That was, and Mr. Mumey had said to me at one
Because
point,
we don't want to take away the board's ability
to-
to change it
To
without membership. Yeah, because there are tweaks that
Right,
need to be
right, right,
done,
right.
and
and the whole point of this would be just to be notifying the membership that these little odds and ends have happened through the year, and this is why we had to do it, and please ratify.
We would, yeah, and the thing is we don't wanna have to send a ballot for minor corrections.
Whatever a ballot would be going out.
Yeah, but if we're gonna make
right, but
a
we're gonna
change-
reserve the ability for us to
make a
make
change.
changes
No, I
without
understand that.
membership
Because if
voting.
it's a change in sentence structure or something but doesn't change what it says, we don't wanna put that out for the vote of the membership.
Wait, is it just for information? Like, so when we have an election, are we saying these are the items that we've changed on the bylaws?
No,
No.
we are gonna reserve the ability to change them as we get them submitted and agree to, and we're gonna add the members, their ability to make their own changes independent of us during the annual election.
Yeah, kinda like by petition or by,
Yeah, so if they wanna change that we
Yeah.
Okay,
didn't
so like
agree
after
to,
this
then they can
workshop.
say, no, we're gonna do it.
So like after this workshop, say they want 23 McLaren Road in there.
Mhm.
Since we've had, then we would put that in there for the membership to vote.
Well, we would have to
I mean, I'm
change
just trying to-
this
That's
document.
that's kind of minutia.
No, I'm just trying to, right,
Yeah.
but, I mean, say that, I'm just saying that, because I don't want to go into something really deep, that's why I'm just saying 23 McLaren, this is something that,
If they were destitute or
Yeah, they really
overwhelming,
want
had
this.
to have that, then they would,
is that what you're saying, that then
Petition
we
for
would
it,
go
I
ahead and
guess.
put it on there?
Yes, we would put it on there and we would go file it and make it official.
yes.
And then if they had some amendments to the bylaws that we did not enact after they came to a meeting and said, we want this, then at the next annual election, they'd
Right.
circulate a petition, get enough members to say, yes, the board's wrong and we want that, and then
You'd
they'd
have
get
to
it
put it
put
on
on
the
the ballot.
Right,
Yes.
and we have to have the ability to make these changes because.
This is
if-
day-to-day operation stuff that you're dealing with, not yearly
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing is that we do have to have it because if state law 209 changes, it doesn't matter whether we put it out for a vote. The members don't like it, too bad. The law says we're gonna do it this
Right.
way.
And to your point, Bill, these bylaws govern the way we, as the board, operate this
Right.
entity.
Right.
But the membership, they own it, so they absolutely should have the right to say, we don't like the way that this says it's running, so we're by majority
they would
vote.
have to
Like the
petition.
envelope thing.
They would have to.
But it's the
petition
same
for-
envelope. It's going on the same
Okay,
ballot.
just be aware, the more we have, bigger the envelopes, and more expensive it is. But that's okay.
It's one ballot.
I'm just,
You get
no, you have to send stuff with it.
Oh, you mean, yeah,
In
but
other words,
Yeah,
we're
if
sending
you're
the same
making,
numbers either
if you're
way.
making changes to the bylaws, you've got to send the bylaws with something.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last part is the law requires us to file it with the county. It does not need to be in here that we have to file it. You can't always file it within 5 business days because you have to get signatures, you have to gotta type it in a final form, gotta get notarized, you gotta get signatures, and sometimes the court's not open. So
the
you-
reason for that is, I won't say who, but Several years back, we had one individual who did not file several.
Yeah, we're trying to change that.
Yeah. As soon as practicable after official adoption.
Yes,
Suffice, I would think.
yes.
Okay,
So
the
now,
whole point of this ultimately was to ensure that the membership, at least the ones paying attention, know what's going on.
Right. And your point is absolutely valid, and we, as a board, try to be as transparent as we can possibly be. We don't do anything behind closed doors that we don't tell you about. So, all boards aren't like that. So I see the want to dig way deep in there, but I think a lot of this stuff was really, I think a lot of these changes came from an emotional argument, really, versus a logical or a business argument. And this is a document that states how we are to conduct the business of the association, so.
I think personally, for you and for us, it was a good exercise.
I do
I think
too.
so too.
Yeah, I
We
enjoyed
spent
the
4 months
discussion.
fooling around with this.
Right, no, I think that this, after a committee, and that's another thing, these members, you guys really put a lot of
Yeah.
sweat into it. So this should happen, whether anything changes or not, you don't wanna think that your time was wasted, or that we, you know, I mean, like, no, I appreciate you.
There was another issue that I'd just like to make now, so don't get upset with me, because what the heck. There was,
We're always upset with you.
the tower, we referred to it as the Tower of Power. And this was important to us. Who would take over in the future if suddenly the,
Me.
yeah, had been fired and we had an individual who wanted to just have total control of the whole
See,
thing?
this is where I get upset with like the people on the board. We're all just like a 5-legged race. The only time in my mind that our title means anything is when during the board meeting. Other than that, we're all responsible for like the treasurer's report, the president's report. So we all need to kind of tell like with the right hand and the left hand. So there really shouldn't be.
Well, what I'm saying is the
Person.
membership, I mean, maybe I'm viewing it incorrectly, and please tell me if I am. The memberships up here, they vote in the board. The board hires the GM.
That's right.
And then after that, the GM hires the employee.
That's correct.
So, it's in our minds, part of this group talking, it was flipped, or has been flipped.
And you were not wholly mistaken. The board of directors' powers are spelled out very plainly in this very document, what we can and cannot do. Our job is not day-to-day operations of Fort Clark
Right.
Springs.
And it went on for a long time, so.
The problem is,
and
if
we
there's
haven't
no
had
GM,
it too for a while.
that becomes our job. The problem is, it becomes our job.
Not one,
Previously,
no,
exactly.
there was one person that
So
tried to do
again,
that.
all of this was not a personal thing on any of you, it was just an exercise for some of us to clear our head and to figure out what should actually be happening here. I think you guys have made that clear. So anyway,
The key is to make sure this position's not a revolving door. He's made our lives.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
it
it
goes
is.
anywhere.
Unfortunately,
Appreciate you.
some boards in general in past decades have made this position a revolving door. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely.
It really is, which is why we made some of the changes that we do not elect a full quorum anymore. Okay? So we
I
have-
don't understand what you just said.
Okay, it used to be we'd elect 3 and 2, and now we elect
Oh, I
2,
see.
2, and 1.
Yes, I got you.
Okay, because part of the board's responsibility, the only employee that we hire is him.
Right,
Now, what we did, again, you're talking about 1 or 2 people that violated the bylaws on a daily basis. The problem was not the bylaws, the problem were the individuals involved in violating the code of ethics, okay? When we assigned managers, there were 3 managers under 3 different areas.
right, and we talked about that in our Tower of
Right,
Power.
and we did
Yeah.
that because we cannot sit in that spot. And when I was in the office, all I was doing was putting fires out. Managers were handling all the personnel, all the procedural issues and so forth until
And
we
nobody
had Alan.
made a decision on personnel or anything else without the input of the rest of the board members.
There were no unilateral
You know,
decisions made.
and we made a very conscious effort to hire a GM who we felt would do the business of the fort to a degree that his job should not be imperiled when the next board comes on. Like, if a man is doing his job the way it's supposed to be done, there's no reason to get rid of him. So
Right.
my only caution to the membership in general is be very careful of cliques, because like we saw happen when we used to elect an entire quorum and one, if you get a clique that doesn't like somebody, you're starting from scratch every single time. So just the board should be a reflection of the membership
It should be
as a whole, yes.
And I personally have come to the conclusion that you have two big things to hang your hat on. Maybe I'm sure there's a whole lot more, but the two big ones. And that would be hiring him, and the second one would be, what was it, the loan.
Oh, thank the US government and pandemic for that.
The what?
The loan, the PPP loan,
Yeah,
the PPP loan.
I mean, that was a
In
gift.
fact,
yeah,
this,
that was
this time we decided
manna
because
from heaven.
there was some question about, because there was violations of the bylaws and especially the code of ethics. One thing that we did is each one of us signed the code of ethics, which would give the other board members reason to censure or remove that person if they violated the code of ethics. It also had, everybody here had to sign a confidentiality agreement. Because one of the complaints from the last couple of years were that people outside of the board were seemingly privy to information that they should not have been about employees and so forth.
Yeah.
So we all signed the confidentiality agreement. Again, if someone within the board failed to honor that, then we would have a reason to either censure or remove them. And we have been very, very careful not to do those things because we didn't need to continue on with that
Yes, we're all
sort of thing.
volunteers. We weren't elected by the membership. We saw serious trouble and thought that we could make a difference for the better for the membership.
Is
We
there
all
somebody
own
from
and
the
pay
election committee?
assessments
Do you know the
just
election
like
committee?
y'all, so.
I'm sorry?
Is he right here from the election committee? I was just curious, do we know if we've gotten?
Memo.
Yeah, memos here.
Yeah.
We've gotten a pretty good,
3, I heard 3.
Well, not officially, we only got.
Two signed up, one talking about is what I
we
heard.
Well-
don't make this look fun?
I was at the meeting. I just came from the meeting. There's only
Okay.
one person that signed up.
So
Is
far
it
we
one
have,
now?
we have
Okay.
one person for three slots?
One person has signed up, and we're waiting for more.
And you know, you'll get in the last 2 weeks. That's what we did last time. We went from having, in 2018, we went from having like 3 to 2 weeks before, we had like another 4 just on it, so.
Oh.
Okay. So and I've already,
I went to a tax meeting last night and everybody there said, anybody that runs for the board needs to have their head checked.
Oh, that's how you elect, that's how
you know,
you
and
get,
Bill and I are still here on that.
I laughed.
The point is the hiring of this position, you know, I don't wanna keep praising him, he's gonna,
I mean, I'll sit here.
want a whole
He's gonna
lot of
walk on
stuff.
water tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
but the point is that if you hire the right person to run it, we don't have a job.
Right, it takes, I can see the pressure taken off her.
Yeah, so this is where what's important.
Yes.
If the board hires the right person, then we don't have a job per se. Yes, we oversee what he does, but as far as running the business and making decisions, we don't really have to do that.
Yeah, I honestly probably went from pre-Allen, 20 or 30 hours a week,
oh, like the email.
working on this and doing emails and researching and studying, and to now,
I know, like,
probably 5 or 6 hours a week max.
right. Well, and with my mom, too, I was like, oh, I don't wanna open this email, cause I was kinda,
Yes.
and then I was like, most of the stuff are dispatches. I was like, all right. Because I didn't want to be, why haven't I heard from you, Rihanna? But no, thank you.
Well,
See, and I
the
think that-
workshop is
you know what I
technically
think,
over, so
seriously?
let's dismiss the workshop and then anybody wants to sit and talk.
I think,
Okay, the workshop, what time is it?
What time is
It is 7:54.
Or 7:54, the workshop is concluded.
Thank God, I got home.
the thing about it, Dustin, I think, you